Pete, welcome back to Two Sides of the Table.
And it's fantastic to actually be on the other side of the table rather than the other side of the country like we were for the last episode.
That was great, though. It was a good testing ground for us, though, see if we can do that in the future if we ever need to.
Yeah, well, we found out that the technology works.
Funny that. So, Pete, what have you been up to in the last couple of days since I've seen you?
Yeah, well, I think like everyone, it's that end of financial year craziness at the moment. So we're definitely in the midst of that. But we've just completed the 4th MSP Masterclass in Perth, and we've got our 5th coming in Brisbane next week. So it'll certainly make lugging those bags and banners around a little bit easier that it's closer to home. And what about yourself?
Yeah, we've been pretty similar. I think I mentioned in our last episode, we're moving offices again. So that is now finished and finalised. So I'm very grateful because
You would be an expert with the Allen key by now, I am sure.
I've done probably about 7 moves personally, and this is maybe my 5th or 6th office move in my career. So it's I've definitely got the skill down pat now. But Pete, what have you been listening to, reading? We haven't talked about that for a while.
We haven't, no. So, look, to be honest, I've actually just been really immersed in just getting stuff done on the plane.
Yeah,
so rather than
nice.
just taking that check out there. But look, I have to admit that Julianne and I have been watching the Rafa series on Rafa Nadal, actually.
Oh,
and been
wow.
really enjoying that Netflix series. It's something a little bit different and not business related, but
Yep.
what an inspiring story, that's for sure.
Fabulous. Sometimes it's nice to just have a bit of a break from the information coming in, right? And just sit there and watch something a little bit more mind-numbing. Not that I'm sure that his story is mind-numbing, but sometimes it's nice just to sit
Exactly,
there.
but I have to admit it's been really difficult to wait in between episodes so that we can watch it together. And what have you been up to, like content-wise? I know that you're always like a good podcast.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a couple of episodes ago I was rereading Good to Great. And the one that I have been actually listening to is the same author that does 10 times is easier than 1 times or 2 times.
10x
10x
is easier than 2x.
yeah. But this one's called The Gap and the Gain. And the reason I sort of picked this one up was because I tend to be someone who gets so invested in the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and never actually stop to smell the roses. I think that's most entrepreneurs.
Yep.
But this book was really good about talking about making sure that you're looking at the gains rather than just the gap between where you are now and what you wanted to. So very good. I haven't finished it yet, but so far so good.
I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, please do. Anyway, we are still in the depth of season 3. So we are nearly at the end though. And today we are joined by Cameron McFie. So Cameron is the founder and managing director of Xeneth. So Cam has spent years working closely with MSPs to sort of help them gain visibility in one of the most overlooked areas of their business, which is Microsoft licensing and billing. So while most MSPs have their process down pat for billing their customers and sending out those invoices on a monthly retainer, many of them struggle with accurately tracking their Microsoft spend, which is what Xeneth helps them do. So as businesses grow and they gain more customers, that becomes super, super difficult. So what we're going to talk about in this episode is just how important Microsoft billing is, the accuracy behind it, and some of the data and analytics behind billing and looking for profit gains in your business. Cameron, welcome to Two Sides of the Table.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So it's awesome. So thank you very much.
No worries. So I suppose talk to us about, let's start at the very beginning, because I think when people maybe read the title of this episode, they might think, oh, I've got my invoicing down pat. I've got my billing down pat. I know how to bill my customers. That's not what you're talking about, is it?
No, it's not. I guess, yes, people always say they've got their billing right. I have that conversation very, very often.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really that they're not trying hard. It's a very hard process to get right. So typically MSPs are losing about 10% in revenue every year. So that's a lot of money. If you look like a standard MSP, that's say $1 million MSP, that's about $50,000 a year they're throwing out the door because they're not billing properly. So I say $50,000 because it's typically about half of their revenue is the managed services and the CSP piece. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I remember when I first started Digital Team, sort of, talking to a lot of MSPs, And it worked out really quickly. Don't call them on the first of the month because typically they've got a beer or a bottle of wine in their hand, and it's normally that they're trying to get all of that billing out as quickly as possible. So I can imagine the inaccuracies that occur just because they've got 6 beers deep, but also because it is really complex. And my understanding is Xeneth doesn't just do CSP billing, you also then help make sure that managed services contracts are correct as well.
Yeah, look, we're a billing automation solution that kind of helps you in multiple areas, from CSP to the managed services. But we like to think of ourselves as more of like a billing partner. So yes, we've got a tool, but we don't go, here you go, run the tool, go away. We like to come into businesses and look at your profitability as a whole, do audits for you, do all sorts of things. We look at all that complexity that you have to deal with on a regular basis. And yes, it's not just that you're 5 beers deep that you're getting your billing wrong. It's just people, just time. They may be 5 beers deep, or they just take shortcuts because it's so complex, or it just takes so much time. So typically I see, MSPs keep telling me it only takes them an hour to do billing or something like that. But I just don't see any MSP that does billing in an hour. That's just not right. It's usually 2 to 3 days minimum. And that's once you count not just the calculations of the billing, the sending out the bills, then if you get your bills wrong, now you've got to deal with credits, you've got to deal with angry customers, and you really erode trust as you get bills wrong, basically.
Definitely. Why is it so complex, though?
So Microsoft being Microsoft, they love to add all sorts of rules. But yeah, look, over the years, Microsoft's made all sorts of programs like SPLA and CSP and the likes. And SPLA was one really difficult one. They kind of moved to a new model called CSP, which was supposed to be easier, but it's still very complex. So if you look at changing, like let's say one subscription changes once in a month, that's at least 3 line items. Now, if you look at they upgrade a license from Business Basic to Premium or something like that, that ends up being like 5 lines, and they're very complex lines that don't really tell you much about what's going on. They tell you that this is the price for this one, this is the price for that one, but they don't tell you there was actually a change in product at that point. So that's then up to the billing person to go back to sales or support and go, hey, what happened here? Why did the price change? This is just weird. So there's that. Just Microsoft's changing pricing. So every quarter they're allowed to change their pricing. Wow. So based on FX changes. So a lot of people are missing out on those price changes. So once again, taking shortcuts, they're still using the same pricing from a long time ago, and that's where they're missing out on a lot of dollars. So typically I see that one is the number one area where people are losing out of money, is not keeping up to date with pricing. So look, they may be going through the effort and getting all the quantities right, they may be getting all the right customers, which most people aren't getting all that, but and then after all that, they just haven't done that last step, which is to get the pricing right, which is a big one. That's a massive thing.
But there's also the complexity is, I think, every MSP, as much as they say they do things standard, always have the bespoke contracts, because some will bill pro rata, some will bill in advance, some will do 12-month billing, and some will then just do at the end of each month to reconcile. Is that one of the other complexities that you see as well?
Very much so. So we got one company that's basically they're getting an invoice from Ripe, which is billing in arrears, and then they're having to transform all that data in advance. And so I've talked to all sorts of other MSPs that make it even more complex than that, where if a change happens halfway through the month, they prorate in advance for the change halfway through the month. But then if there was an issue, they revert it back in the next invoice, and it's just a manual nightmare that someone has to deal with.
Yeah, no wonder there's money being left on the table.
I mean, I remember you telling me that there's entire teams that actually go through this, these Microsoft bills, I suppose, to make sure that it's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I've talked to companies all around the world. One company, they were doing $10 million a month in CSP, and it was taking 10 staff 30 days a month to do their billing. And I just can't comprehend that someone's manually doing that process and even thinking they're going to get it right, because that's
Oh.
just so much to think about.
Yeah.
And in those 10 people, there were like executives, VPs, all that sort of thing, all the way down to, your billing reconciliation person. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of money there in that place. And from a managed services point of view, like, Pete, you mentioned about, all sorts of complexities around the deals and the likes. A lot of people aren't thinking about how all these vendors interlinked. So, you might have a vendor that's relying on a mailbox, so a mailbox backup product as an example, and then you've got your actual mailbox at Microsoft. And so they don't actually look at, okay, I've got 5 mailboxes at Microsoft, but I'm paying 10 licenses for my mailbox backup. Why am I paying 10 licenses for my backup when I've only got 5 mailboxes? It's really weird.
Yeah. And you're obviously super passionate about this. So, this is not your first ride at the rodeo when it comes to billing. Like, you've had a long, distinguished career in the MSP and billing space. So maybe take us a little bit back to the start about, why you got so excited about this as a particular problem to solve.
Yeah, look, at the start, I wouldn't call it excitement. It started with me having a company called Emantra, and we got smacked with a big bill from Microsoft. So we did a supplier audit with Microsoft, and they found that we were under reporting to Microsoft by $100,000. And so we got smacked with a big $100,000 bill, which was just us not having the processes right, same as billing. We just didn't properly track things. And the supplier program was so complex, so we didn't track it properly. We got a $100,000 bill, which we had to take on the chin. We had to give Microsoft $100,000. We couldn't back bill our customers for that $100,000 because we didn't do it right in the first time. So that's where it all started, was me then going, all right, well, we need to start looking into this. Then I joined a company called Ripe, which I'm sure a lot of your viewers are aware of. So Ripe, I was a CTO at Ripe, and my job there was to look at all of their processes around finance reporting and analytics generally around that. So we found that in a $220 million company, they were underbilling by about 3%. Wow. So that's a lot of money that they were leaving on the table. And that was just because they had automated systems, but they had 7 automation systems. They had a lot of manual process involved, and it meant a lot of money went out the window. As part of my role as CTO there, I got to speak to a lot of MSPs and found that people are manually billing, and it just blew my mind. So I saw the problem of 3% with Ripe having automated systems, never alone, like, let's look at manual systems with MSPs. So since then, I've kind of done audits with all sorts of big companies, and I found 2 companies $1 million a year they've been underbilling, and it's just, it blows my mind. As I said, 10% is the average. I've seen up to 15.9% underbilling. So,
And so where does Xeneth come into this? Like, did you start Xeneth after that, and then, like, is that what Xeneth does? I'm assuming it's a piece of software that's sort of, or a program that people can sort of plug into, and it takes into a consideration all of the things you've mentioned already. So, that it knows the CSP program, it knows if bills are in arrears or, in advance, or all of those complexities, and it basically does the calculation for you?
Yeah, of course. So I guess, like, I'll come back again to Ripe for a second and say part of my job at Ripe was actually to start the CSP program at Ripe. So I learned a lot about the CSP program at Microsoft. So we were the first in Australia to go and set up the CSP program, and it was a monolithic, like, it was a massive job to go through. But part of that, I learned a lot of the lessons that people get wrong and see what happens. So we started a business basically around automating that process, getting all of that knowledge I took from Ripe into an automated process to basically grab the pricing, grab the real numbers, and actually be able to reconcile to the cent. Like, even at Ripe, we weren't reconciling to the cent, which is quite sad. But now we've got it to the point where we can reconcile to the cent. We know what your costs are coming in, what you're selling to your customers. We're always keeping up to date with the pricing. And that's the big thing where, as I said, people are losing out, is that pricing and getting things right. And also keeping track of customers that you haven't billed. Like, that's another simple thing. People have got a billing process in place, but a salesperson sold this deal to someone, but they never talked to finance, and so finance haven't got that set up in their system,
Yeah, wow.
and they've never started billing, and that's that could be 10 months, that could be 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if a $220 million organisation with automation can't get it right, no wonder there's a challenge out there. But I always think the first thing, is actually understanding and admitting you've got a problem in order to fix that. So why do you think that there's resistance from MSPs and TSPs about recognising the billing challenge?
Because billing's boring.
I like money, Kayla. Do you like money?
I love money.
Oh, yeah. So, look, yes, people, but they don't see it as that. That's the problem. So, there's some bright, shiny toys over here, which we can sell the customer. We can provide a really cool experience. We can put in AI. We can put in security. We can do all these really cool things. But billing, that's for finding the back of house person to deal with. And that's we don't care about that. That's someone else's problem to deal with. And Julie does that well. She's happy. She's doing a great job in the corner. She tells me she's got 100% right, so I trust her and everything's good.
Yeah, it's almost like we'll just put more in the top and not fix the leaky bucket.
Correct, yeah. And I see that is a big scalability problem. So that's fine when you've got 10 customers. Yeah. And that's fine. Julie's doing a great job in the corner, and sorry to pick on the name, Julie, but yeah. So you got that person sitting in the corner, but they don't scale. It doesn't scale when you get bigger, and so we're dealing with MSPs that are $400 or $500 million MSPs, and they're struggling. They got teams of 7, 8 staff, and they still can't get it right.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a few numbers today, What are you seeing across the MSP market as the average that's been left on the table? Is it 5%, 10%? What's the average that you're seeing? Because you've sort of said anywhere from 3% to 15%.
Yeah, so the 3% was ripe, which was kind of a little bit different. So 10% is the average.
Yeah, right.
So 10% is what myself and all my competitors see every single time. So all my competitors are saying exactly the same thing across the world. 10% is the magic number. 5% is generally the minimum that we see.
Wow.
But yeah, 15.9 is the highest I've seen, which is just ridiculous. But back to my point about scale. It might start at a 5% problem, but the big companies with $1 million found, that was a $200 million company.
Yeah.
So, yes, of course, they've got a bigger problem because of scale.
Yeah.
And it's almost like MSPs can't afford not to solve this problem, because if they can increase, their billing for CSP by 10%, that's just going to go straight to the bottom line. And it's, I think, really about how do you work smarter rather than harder. And especially when you look at the data from the industry at the moment, is that 25% of MSPs are not making any money in the last quarter, and the industry average is only 6%. So there's an incredible amount of money that somebody would be putting in their jeans as a result of being able to get billing right.
Yeah, you're right. I look at, you across the table, marketing, right? So take $50,000, take $100,000 you're getting back, put that into marketing, put that into sales, turn that into $1 million, whatever it is, right? So if you don't focus that area, yes, back of house is not fun, it's boring, but look, when you look at the numbers and do the analytics on it, you're losing money, and it's easy money, as you said, Pete. It's basically money you're throwing away that you could be putting towards a boat or a new salesperson or whatever.
Yeah. And I think that there's a big focus in the industry around operational efficiency at the moment. People are looking at automation tools, whether that's Pure or Roost or many of the other tools out there. But it seems that there's missing something then in part of that efficiency journey, which is then how do we get all of our back-of-house operations to be automated, efficient, and accurate?
Yeah, look, those automation tools, there is a lot of them going in place. And yes, that helps with the efficiency. So the number one problem from a process point of view is generally onboarding and offboarding. So if you look at the automation process you talked about, like Roost and Pio, that is the first area I would focus on if on MSP, because then if you at least know who's starting, who's ending, you've at least got a track of what's going on. So another problem I see, when we're talking about support and the likes, is They may add a new user, and that's a poor person sitting over there in the corner, and they don't like talking to people. And it's, as a
In
tech...
this industry, no.
But they don't like talking to people, so they basically go and they create a ticket, and they respond to the customer in email, and they say, yes, that we've added a new user, we've added another 2 users, we've added 4 users. The thing is, though, is they never tell finance, or they do tell finance, some of them, but not all of them. And when you look at a typical finance process that happens, and people get shocked every time I say this, but it happens so regularly, is they take the support tickets to go, hey, there's +1, +2, -5, +3. Imagine if one of those were missing, so especially the -5. You've lost out on a lot of revenue, or you're overbilling your customer or underbilling your customer. In fact, sorry, I'm going to say this, overbilling is a big a problem as underbilling, because it really erodes customer trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I've always think, customer satisfaction is every part of the journey. It's, not only getting the smile back, thumbs up, but it's also then getting the invoicing right, because it doesn't matter what you do in the front end, that great customer experience can get eroded super quickly when the bill is incorrect, and you have to say sorry and credit that and refund. But it's also the impact that has on cash flow as well, because, if it's inaccurate, you really challenged to collect that, because you've got to reissue the invoice, and all of a sudden that billing cycle starts again before you're putting then that money in your bank account.
Yeah, what do you say, Pete? Like, everyone in the business is a salesperson, even if you're doing the invoicing.
Yeah, 100%.
I had a really good scenario you were talking about there, but a very large distributor, I won't mention their name, but they totally screwed up their bill to their MSPs, and it was a lot of Azure bills that they just totally forgotten. And so all these MSPs have sent out their bills. They've gone, the bill to this customer, the customer's used $1,000 usage this month. And for one customer, one MSP I saw, they were like, the distributor bill was $10,000 underbilled to the MSP. And the MSPs just billed their margin on top of the $1,000. And so that's a lot of money that now the MSP's got to cough up, but now the MSP has to have a conversation with the customer. Oh, by the way, oops.
But it wasn't even their fault.
It's not their fault. But, this is where even to the distributor level, as my company I used to work for, if you're going to get it right from there and all the way down, it's a big problem. And vendors are having problems with their bill as well. That's where you got to do that reconciliation piece as well. So,
and that's what the Xeneth platform looks at, or does that look at the bill that was received from the disty?
So we look at the bill received from the disty.
Yeah.
So we are, as a business, moving to that data and analytics side and reconciliation side. So try and look at all your different vendors, and knowing that a mailbox backup product requires a mailbox. So if you don't have a mailbox, obviously you can't have a mailbox backup. So we're starting to do research around all of that and try and pull in the data from those different vendors and try and see whether the numbers add up, basically, is the idea.
Yeah, it's almost like checking that distributor invoice.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
Yeah. And my understanding is Xeneth as a platform is actually not just a billing automation platform. It's now able to do those analytics. So those scenarios where all of a sudden the Azure consumption drops off, you're able to see that and understand what's caused that almost in real time.
Yeah, so we basically built into the magic word AI, right? So everyone
I was thinking we could get through an entire episode not talking about AI.
Not a chance. But so we too have built an AI assistant that you can basically ask natural language questions to, whether you're on the road with your phone or whatever. You're about to walk into a customer meeting and you want to know why, what happened, go through the invoice. Why did the Azure usage go up on this customer? And then it's like, well, they've just deployed all these premium assets this month, and that's why that's gone up in this month. So we're kind of getting more into that analytics side and more of that executive reporting side. So I've seen people do like 80-page, or one MSP I deal with, they have a report which is 80 pages long the executives receive every month. And that's just a ridiculous report. It's way too much information.
Yeah, does anyone read it?
How do you use that?
I think that's why there's a thing called an executive summary in most reports. Is that's where most people focus.
Or you could just chuck the report into AI now and get it to tell you the key points.
Well, that's it. So basically, rather than grabbing that report and chucking it into AI, we're kind of making that available like live. So, as you mentioned, we want the live thing. We want to walk into a customer meeting and the customer's going, hey, but our bill's gone up by 10 grand. And so you're sitting there on your phone going, hey, why did the bill go up for this customer by $10,000? And it goes, well, you've had John, Julie, you've done this, and this is what's happened. So it's more focused around the MSP looking at their business at the moment rather than the MSP showing their end customers. But there's a lot of interest from that point of view where we've got MSPs wanting to show that sort of thing to their customer so that they can explain without even having to talk to the MSP why things have changed.
Yeah, and that's super powerful because I don't know about our listeners, but I can't remember what I did yesterday, let alone what I did earlier in the month. So the ability to then go, actually, it was because you lit up fabric and you've done this, you've done that, that's caused this. And then someone can go, oh, yeah, that's right. It makes sense now. So, yeah, that insight can be really powerful, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do you see a breakdown in the processes of billing? Like you mentioned, like the finance process is generally pretty stock standard and built into a business before you kind of come into it. But then, it's usually that breakdown between communications. Do you sort of recommend a process to MSPs as they go through it, apart from obviously deploying your product?
Yeah, no, of course. Well, that's why I come back to my term. I think we think of it as more of a billing partner than a platform.
Yeah.
So, yes, we look at stuff that we don't even touch, we can't automate. We look at the process. We look at, as an example, Microsoft CSP introduced this program called NCE, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. And so we went and spent 2 weeks with every single one of our customers or our MSPs and kind of went through what are they doing, how are they changing over this new program and going through all that process. But I know you were talking about the internal process more, but so from an internal process, yes, this is where I talk to them about Roost and Pia and how to basically improve their onboarding, offboarding. But, in bigger companies, we've talked to them. I've talked to procurement team, I've talked to sales and kind of got them in a room and, done a different thing, which is actually do a workshop and go, hey, how does this process work from end to end? Like one of those cases of losing a lot of money was an MSP that had a projects team, so obviously a bigger MSP, but had a projects team, and you've got finance, you've got a projects team, you've got sales. So sales is going, yep, cool, I've got this sale, it's awesome, it's over to you, Mr. Project Man. And then the project guys got a project which is for 12 months of rolling out new PCs, networking equipment, new everything, right? And so they come into this customer and it's a staged approach thing. But they've got this contract which says we've got to provision 500 new mailboxes for a customer. So they provision 500 mailboxes on day one, but they're not actually giving it to the customer until month 5 or something like that. And so I found out in this case, the billing person went, oh, I can't bill them for that because the
project's not complete.
Project's not complete. And so they're just losing money hand over fist with this process because they went, oh, we can't bill a customer for something you're not using. But that was a big process breakdown as an example of where they, the procurement department is not talking to sales, which is not talking to finance and support and the likes. And it was a big breakdown.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, you can understand why it gets so complex so quickly because, in fast organisations where you are moving really rapidly, you're actually making lots of change and being able to capture that change accurately and get the billing accurate and all of those things just add to that. And I think, every organisation would love to be able to be more efficient and not have to worry about things quite as much. So you can see where, billing can be a big part of that efficiency gain.
Oh, definitely. And as you said, it's a quick win, straight to the bottom line, right? So, I think that's the big thing. And whether you use an automation tool like mine or not, it's spend the time on it, spend the focus on it because it is quick money. And, that's the thing. I've do audits like this when I mentioned the two $1 million ones.
Yeah.
That was just an audit. I've come in for 2 weeks to come and have a look at their processes and how they do stuff. And that took me 2 weeks. Like some of these, but that was for big companies. I've done this same thing in a day for other companies, take 45 minutes of their time to go through it. And, they could spend a day on this and get things right. So even if they don't want to use a product like mine, just spend the time, think about billing because it is an important thing to get right.
Yeah. So What do you think if you were running an MSP today? What do you think the first thing you would do would be to make sure that billing is accurate?
Ooh, tough one. Like you mentioned before, Pete, I think the peer and roost, trying to automate those onboarding, offboarding processes, and then having that feed to finance straight away. Whether it's feeding directly into ConnectWise Autotask, whatever platform you choose to use, that's a big one. If I was doing it today, I would probably use more insights today, so more data and insights. So looking at exactly what I was saying around the reconciliation side, where people are, got 10 mailbox backups but only 5 mailboxes and things like that. That's where I'd spend a bit of focused. But like even myself, you go like, if you started MSP, would I focus on that? And like the answer is probably no.
Yeah.
If I'm being really honest, it's that's if I start an MSP. But if I've got an established MSP that's been around for 4 or 5 years, then yes, this is a problem and you won't be able to scale without it. So at 10 users or 10 customers, it's easy. You can do an Excel spreadsheet and get it done in an hour with your beer in your hand, as you said. So I guess it depends on where you are in the business.
You're at, as a business owner.
So, but yeah, definitely it's something I would try and automate as much as possible rather than do manual processes. And keep up to date with pricing. Vendor pricing is the big thing, I'd say.
Yeah, and it really sounds like, one of the big challenges is that process debt that, early on in the business, it is really easy to keep everything perfect because, as the founder, you're the only employee, so you're across everything. And then as you start to bring other people into the organisation, there's this drift that starts to occur. And then over time, the problem just compounds and gets bigger and bigger. Where, when you're able to wrap your arms around, 5, 6 customers and know everything that's going on, it's easy. But, when you're 100 customers that you're billing, you just can't be across it all.
Of course, yeah. And that's, so I think the magic number for me would be about 50 customers. So at about 50 customers or below, you kind of can keep a track of it, but it depends on how many vendors you got, right, as well, right? So,
and how big the customers are.
Some MSPs have got like 200 vendors, and it's how do you get 200 invoices and deal with all of that and reconcile all that properly. But I guess, so just thinking back to your question around internal processes, is more about sales than about billing, and it's about getting your pricing right. So that you've got consistent pricing, and you don't have a salesperson going out there and doing a deal that's, staged or tiered over here, and then this customer is a minimum of 10, and this customer over there is X. Like, yes, you can change your different unit prices, but the process of how you bill, so whether it's billed per user, per device, whatever it is, I just see that's another big problem that people make mistakes with. And that's kind of, as MSPs or TSPs have grown up into MSPs, I guess, as well, they've gone from T&M billing through to a recurring service, and they probably weren't ready for that at the time. And so they did all these different processes, and then they've then got all these other vendors, they've got this cloud, they've got all sorts of things that are constantly changing. And people don't spend the time back to the back of house. It's boring. It's boring, but it makes you profit. But the thing is that, if you have started from the start, that's typically where people are making the mistakes in the end. And you look at things like recurring contracts. So one of my MSPs, they hadn't looked at their contract for 10 years, and they made a guess of a customer. They've come and put the finger in the air, and they've gone, all right, I think this customer is going to be $5,000 a month. They've looked around, they've seen a few printers and PCs and whatever it is, and they've gone, it's $5,000 a month. And then 10 years later, that company now has 100 employees, and they've gone, oh, oops.
And they haven't changed the invoice.
They haven't changed the invoice in 10 years.
Ouch.
Wow.
And imagine that sales or that account manager having to talk to the customer and go, oops, we've been underbilling you by $30,000 a month in that case.
Wow.
And so that was a hard call. So
and the problem obviously compounds because you're billing inaccurately for CSP, you're billing inaccurately for your managed services. No wonder people are struggling to make profit. But Do you think the challenge is that the industry used to be perpetual licenses? You would buy your license once and sell that to the customer and never thinking about it again. But we now move to a consumption world where we invoice based on what an organisation has consumed. Do you think that's the big challenge in mind shift for most people? Is that perpetual was easy to bill and we got it right. Now we've moved into the consumption world. It's really, really difficult.
I definitely agree with you. It's more that the vendor programs have got more and more complex. Coming back to what you asked before, Kayla, which is around the Microsoft licensing, why is it so hard? They're constantly changing their program around what's included, what's excluded, how can you do upgrades when you can't do upgrades, and the fact you can only increase, you can't decrease, and things like that, and people aren't ready for that. So I guess that's another thing I would say. I know you've had another person on this chat around this, but is like keeping track of that CSP and like when do you buy licenses for a customer? Is a thing I would say, because now, as you may know, that when you buy a Microsoft license, you can only go up, you can't go down in quantity. So if you do an annual commitment for a customer, the customer's on the hook, but you need to make it very clear to the customer they're on the hook. And I think I'm just thinking about your question there, Peter. I guess yes, it was easy. It's one off. It's done, one and done. But I think it's because there's so many different license types and the vendors are making it all different. But just, I don't know, it's just an ever-changing program. And I look at even the way people bill, we started T&M, then people did per device, and then people doing per user.
Yeah.
And now I'm hearing this outcome as a service, which I'm going, like outcome-based billing. And I'm going, what is outcome-based billing? This is a weird thing where people are coming back to, they kind of want, like, what does the customer need? What is this customer? And this customer needs a lot more than this customer over there. And they're the same number of seats. They've got exactly the same, number of seats, but, this customer is going to call us 5 times a day, and they want all this complex infrastructure and stuff like that. So it's a bigger outcome and a bigger risk for you as an MSP. So, that's a different billing style. So, I talk about the outcome-based billing, like add complexity. Wow, that's just a whole other thing. How do you measure the complexity and risk that goes with that?
Yeah, it's a minefield, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, one of the things we hear in the industry is, with all of those changes, one of the things that Microsoft has brought in is now, if you commit for 12 months and your end customer, goes into voluntary administration or something like that, that the MSP's on the hook as well. And is there a way that people should be thinking about that approach as part of that complexity and how they structure constructs of billing?
Yes, but once again, complexity is... Typically, I advise people to do a hybrid approach. So it depends on the size of the company. Obviously, it's a very small company. I generally either tell them to bill annual, or monthly. Either way, annual, obviously, is going to be a cheaper price. But then you're assured you've got your money there if Microsoft comes to you for it. But I guess the way I talk about hybrid is those bigger companies that may go through growth periods, and then they go through retrenchments, and then go through growth periods and then retrenchments. That's where you kind of need, I think, an annual commit of, say, 70%, 80% of the licenses, and then you go to monthly for the other bits. So that way they can go up and down every month, and it's fine.
Yeah, that sounds super smart.
Yeah.
Cam, thank you so much for joining us today. I've certainly learnt a lot. I'm sure you have as well, Pete.
Yeah, look, super insightful. And look, we're actually going through our annual renewal at the moment. And look, there's certainly a few tips and tricks there that we'll be taking back to see how we can make sure that we optimise that billing piece. That's for sure.
Cameron, if people would like to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Quite simply, Cameron at Xeneth.com, Xeneth.com. So it's not a Z or a Z. Xeneth.com, and Cameron at is the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'm on LinkedIn most times of the day. So if you want to grab me as well, it's Cameron McFie, MCFIE.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Pete, thank you for joining me on the other side of the table.
Yeah, awesome to be here. And once again, Cam, thank you so much, because I think the consultative approach that you bring to the table is valuable for any MSP. And, if I'm sure many of our listeners will reach out, in order to be able to sort of, pick your brains and get some of the knowledge. But thank you for sharing in today's podcast.
Thank you both.